Hi, everyone. I believe that all of you are so great and amazing today. Adelari Additional here, and I am so happy about the stories that we had in the last 7 days on receiving money, using imagination to receive money. And I know that by now, all of you are so sure. We have so many people amongst us that by now we have so many people amongst us who are really, really sure of the simple idea that it is all done in imagination. Probably before now, I'd learned to take actions to make money, or you should have to remove some blocks in your subconscious mind before you can make money, or you have to reprogram yourself before you can make money. But a simple exercise, I don't think it would take any one of you more than 1 minute to really imagine it. If you follow the steps, maybe you're not used to the imagining yet, and so you have to bring your attention back, and that might take you 2 or 3 minutes. A simple exercise, and there you go. You're able to create results. We have 50 success stories, and up until this moment, I still have success stories coming in of people who have even received more than 3 times, 4 times within the last 7 days of using that exercise. I want you to observe what actually happened in this case. We, and I'll share a story with you. I love to eat nice meals, but there is one particular meal that I do not like. And why don't I like it? Well, because the first time I had an experience of eating it, the person who prepared it added too much of some ingredients that was just meant to, make it sweet, but then they added too much, and so that um, made it taste well not so nice. So I didn't like it. What am I driving out here is that when it comes to results, or when it comes to the law of assumption, there are two things that have to be in place. The first is the study of the law of assumption, and the second is the practical application of the law of assumption. Both of them really must happen together. Now, you must study the right things, and also you must have um, the application ongoing of the right things you've studied. So when we say study, I don't mean just take any book or just get anything and read. I just give you some instances here. There are books I've read that said action is very important before you make money. But so many of you received money. This morning I still got someone give me a message and say, I received money twice. Both of them were gifts and nothing they had to work for. But you've probably come across action, and action is the way you can make money. And now it's different, right? So a person who goes on reading books and action is how you make money would probably spend 20, 30 days working so hard at a job before they can make some money. Whereas they could have sat down, imagine it, and within 7 days or 10 days, they would have the money. So study the right lessons. That's the key lesson. That's the key point here. Study the right lessons. Study the right principles. Study the working of the law of consciousness. But that's number one. The second is an application of what you've studied. All right, studying the right thing is not enough. You can know the right thing all from today until tomorrow, but if you don't apply it, nothing changes. So many of us here also have known that imagination creates reality. With imagination, you can have things. Imagination creates results. And you've probably even manifested a lot of things, right, up until this moment. But here is money, and here's an exercise you imagined of how to make money, how to receive money within 10 days. And you imagine it, and then you got the results, just like that. So the application of what you've known, of what you've learned, of what you've heard, does matter. You could be studying the right thing from the best person in the world, but you must apply. Neville had a woman, a grandmother, who was attending his lectures, and for 2 years that she was sent out from her house from her son's house. A son and a daughter-in-law didn't want to have anything to do with her. So she was sent out. They didn't want her around them. They didn't welcome her for 2 years. For those 2 years, all she did was all of those things you must have come across probably from reading books, self-help and all of that, such as the gift sharing. People will give gifts to people, would always attract more people into their lives or whatever. And so she always sent gifts to them. 2 years. Always bought gifts during birthdays for the grandson, for the daughter-in-law, for the son. Sent gifts to them, sent stuff to them, and nothing was happening. They didn't invite her back. They didn't call her back to them. For 2 years, she was writing all sort of letters. Because of course, communicate, express, be the one to reach out. She did all of that. 2 years, nothing happened. Then one day, someone came into Neville's lectures, and she spent 3 weeks attending these lectures, day after day. And then one day she shared the result with Neville. Said, I'd been here for 3 weeks only. I imagined this the first day I heard you speaking. And after I imagined it, I got X, Y, and Z results. Neville shared that on the platform. And the woman said, what is up with me? I have been listening to this man speak the same thing on the platform day after day in the last 2 years. I didn't apply it. And I have a problem. But I didn't apply it to solve the problem. And here comes someone and they apply it and they got results. So from that night on, she began to apply it by imagining receiving 2 letters, which she constructed in her mind, and then read in her mind, and slept reading it in her mind. And that's what she did for 7 days. On the 8th day, she did receive mails. She did receive a mail, and in it were 2 letters written from her daughter-in-law and her son, just as she had imagined. So, to know it is not enough. You must do it. But not just to do anything. Because that's the point of the story I first shared with you. This person cooked. Well, they cooked. They applied. But what kind of recipe did they cook with? They cooked, well, you could say nonsense or poison, because I almost vomited. And from that moment on, I couldn't eat that meal. And there I am. I was a young boy at this time. I loved to eat anything. Experience, explore all sort of foods, all sort of meals. But this one thing, I couldn't eat. Because, well, the person who made it that time, they used the wrong recipe. You must have the right recipe, and then you must get into it and cook. Because if a person says, I have the right recipe, this is the recipe from the best chef in the world, and then they go into the kitchen and they're staring at the recipe, staring at the ingredients, and staring at the gas cooker or the electric cooker, and they're going, okay, food, happen. And nothing happens. But why? Because they're not applying the recipe. Where the recipe says, pour water of 2 cups. They didn't pour any water. Where the recipe says, cut or slice the pepper. They didn't slice any pepper. So what would happen? Would there be any food? No. So they're going to die of hunger. But now they're pumped up, energized, motivated, inspired. And why? Well, because they just saw this most amazing meal on the TV. And it's so great, they're also going to go and do theirs. So they rush into the kitchen and put everything there and start to make one after another. Put everything, pour water, pour this, pour that, and mix the whole thing. And they come out at the end of the day with, well, something that's like a poison. Could poison a person if they took it, because maybe they added 2 cups of salt. Who knows? So why did they do that? Well, of course, because they used the wrong recipe, or maybe had no recipe at all, just went on into the application. That's dangerous. But it's just as dangerous to also have the because that's why we have coaches. He thought day after day, devoted himself to this, did nothing else, just to share the wisdom, share the knowledge with a lot of people, so that we could know what you have to do in your imagination to make things work. And when you get things working, you would know where you did it from. Look at the stories, the 50 stories. The first thing I want everyone to see from that is not, so they made money, but wow. So my imagination could do this all the way. It could do this all this while. Nights when you slept without food, days when you go long days without knowing where you're going to have money from. Or maybe you're a worker, a salary earner, and then you start the beginning of the month. You've spent all the salary you got from last month. You don't know where money is going to come from. You're just looking at, should I have to take this, take that, do X, Y, and Z before the end of the month to try to make some money, or to try to get some money, or to try to borrow some money. But here you come. You could imagine. You could imagine receiving money. And that imagination has been with you all along. From when? Right from birth. So, go on from knowledge to experience. Use your imagination constructively and wisely. And one important thing I also want to mention to us before we leave here is this. You must learn to master your inner speech. If you ask me to recommend to you, okay, Adelare, what is the most important thing for me to learn to master? I would say it's your inner speech. And I want to put a poll right here, and I want you to answer it. Okay, we have a poll here, and I've just launched it. So, have you learned to master your inner conversations? Have you actually gone through a lesson, a study, a process of gaining mastery of your inner conversations? See, I'm not bluffing, and in fact, I don't have to, whatever you want to do to find out or to prove whether what I'm saying is true or not. You can go on and do all your research you care to do. But this is one thing I know for sure. I started with revision right from August 2021. I started to learn it and to do it. Studied it, I mastered it, I began to do it every day until I got great mastery of it. And then I got lots of results with it. I went into self-concept in May 2022. I started to learn it, I practiced it, I mastered it also. But it wasn't until I got into inner conversations that I knew things could literally shift overnight. That I knew that everything we see in this world is actually all created only from imagination in the very most fundamental sense of it. Like there is no other thing. And why is that? Because your inner speech is the most fundamental and creative aspect of your life. It's where everything is built from. It was with inner speech that I manifested something which I had already given up every other effort or motive on. And it's my relationship, which turned into my marriage today. At the time when I created my inner conversation for it, I was studying inner speech. I created an inner speech for it. I began to practice it exactly as I must do. And at that time, I said to myself, no more anything about relationships. I just want to be on my own and have fun, go around the world. So I was, in my actions and my behavior, I was doing the exact opposite of what a person who's wanting to have a relationship would do. I just wanted to travel around. But my assumption, my inner speech was always that I have this loving marriage. And within 14 to 18 days, I got my relationship started. I met her. And then by the time it's a month, exactly since I started the inner speech, she said yes to be my girlfriend. And today she's my wife. A beautiful, loving queen. And it's all from inner speech. So, have you learned to master that? If you haven't, well, I'll tell you something you want to do right now. I teach this. I teach people how to master their inner speech. And I can tell you that every person who's gone through that process and has actually followed every step that I've recommended along the way have only one thing to say today. They only have to say, thank you, Adelare, for that encounter in my life, because it transformed me in ways I never expected. And I'm talking both in terms of people who had to start from a very low level up, and people who are already rising, and still came across that lesson, and they still went up. In both cases, in all situations where they learn how to master their inner conversations, you know what they did? They just skyrocketed their results. Because your inner speech is what is frozen in the world round about you. So, learn to have, what are the two lessons we've discussed today? The first is learn to have the right recipe that you're working with. Take a proper study. Have the right recipe you're working with. And then take that recipe, combine it with the appropriate application. Don't just know things, but apply it. Don't just go, oh, I know what to do, but apply it. And in fact, there is no place where that is the most relevant statement to make as with inner conversations. I don't know, I can't say I've possibly known all the lectures where Neville talks about inner conversations, but I can tell you I know so many lectures. And I know that about 4 of those lectures in particular, okay, where Neville talks about inner conversations, there is one statement he always makes. He always makes this statement, he always says, if to do were as easy as to know what we're good to do, chapels have been churches and poor men's cottages have been princes' palaces. It is easier to teach 20 men how to master your inner conversations than to be one who masters it himself. He always quotes that. It's from William Shakespeare. He always quotes it. He quotes it in The Crown of Heaven. He quotes it in Minor Speech. He quotes it in The Game of Life in Seed Time and Harvest. He quotes it in The Crown of Heaven, Awaken the Imagination. He quotes it all around. Control your inner conversations. Order your conversations are right. He quotes this same passage in all the 6 readings I've just mentioned right now. And that's just some. In Mental Diet, you'd find it there. Out of so many times that he talks about inner speech, inner talking, inner conversations. So, it's very important to have the right knowledge, the recipe, and apply it. Cook. And when it comes to inner speech, more than anywhere else, that is where that statement is most relevant. Because it's really easy to tell a person, oh, master your inner speech. But I do it. Now, it's not easy to do, but I do it. But it's easier to tell you do it, but I even do it. And that's why I can teach it even more boldly. Alright? And I won't shy to tell any person that the whole thing is created from imagination. That inner speech is the most fundamental thing. And that this is the time for you to learn how to master it. So what's your study plan for the rest of this year? For, say, September? What do you intend to study? Or when do you think it's necessary for you to start mastering yourself? To start mastering your own inner talking? If the time is now, then you can simply go on and click this link and get mastery of your inner speech with me. And I'm going to have you learn what you must do and give you the program by which you do it, and you would follow through. When you do, you'd have a transformation in your world that would leave you with the impression, with the understanding forever and ever that all you have to take care of and handle in your life is your inner talking. If you can control that, morning, noon, and night. And Neville says, and we carry it on into our dreams. May I tell you, many of the students I've taught this, or have gone through it and have applied it, would tell me at some point in time, oh, Adelere, I dreamt this. I dreamt I experienced this. I dreamt I saw that. I dreamt and in the dream I said this. Or it was so vivid. Or it was this and that. And they all had mystical experiences. And they all had dreams that were so vivid, they could tell they are the ones controlling the dream. Why so? Because they controlled their inner conversations. Because they're learning to control it. And that's one of the things that happen. Another thing that happened with you learning to master your inner speech is you gain such confidence of living in the end. You do not go doubting or wavering or going back and forth anymore. And finally, you have the results. What time that would be, I can't say. The engagement is usually a month to teach people how to master the inner speech. But what time it would be when you have the result, I can say. For the things that I have seen happening again and again, I could tell you, if you do it appropriately, it should be between this time and this time. Such as with money. You could say it's 10 days because I've done it a number of times. I've seen other people do it a number of times and it's never more than 10 days. But when it comes to some other result, I may not be able to tell you when, but I know for sure that if you do it following the exercise, it could be minutes, it could be hours, it could be days, it could be weeks, but it's surely going to happen. So that's it for today. And remember to keep exercising your imagination. Study with me or not, study Neville or not, study anything in this world or not, whatever you do, continue to practice with your imagination to make it be the way you create and do all the things you want in your world. And hey, because I say study with me or not, study with Neville or not, doesn't mean you should remove study out of it. Because the key lesson today says, have the right recipe. Have the right knowledge. I always study it every day, the right knowledge. Here I'm holding something here that I was reading, and it says, she began to realize that all of us carry on mental conversations, but unfortunately, on most occasions, These conversations are argumentative, that we have only to observe the passerby on the streets to prove this assertion. In the last few days, I sat on myself and began to change some part of my conversations. Yesterday, a student came up to me and said, and she's a coach, she said, "Hey Adelere, I had a dream. I dreamt about you, and I dreamt that you were having a podcast on this topic, rising and awakening love. Yes, rising and awakening love. And that these were the colors." And she told me the colors, very significant, beautiful colors. And I said, "Thank you for your experience." I knew it was what I've been doing in myself that showed up in her. There you go, controlling your inner conversations. And do that both with study and application. So later everyone, and bye-bye.